In this video, we're going to continue from the previous examples and trigger a particle effect whenever our light turns on and our explosion sound plays. I have imported the starter content when I originally made this project. If not, you can go to Add New and look for the content pack, and you can import some starter content. But you should already have this, and we really just need some sort of particle to play. So inside of starter content, if you go down to particles, I think this explosion one right here will work. It might even be better if we do a fire because our light's staying on, right? So I'm going to drag this particle inside the scene, right there. And I'm going to position it where I want it, drag it around. All right, now what I want to happen is whenever we hear this explosion and we turn on the light, we actually want to enable the particle effect as well. It's going to be very similar to how we've done this. This is just practice and for you to get used to doing this. Once we place this in the scene, we can open up our blueprints, open level blueprints. So because we're in our level blueprints, which I'm going to save, Control S, make sure I have my particle selected here. Right click, create a reference, and then off of this object, we can do things. We can, turn it on or off, or everything we've been doing over here. So for our particle in particular, what I want to do is I want to drag off of that and run a function called activate. You'll see activate particle system. You could also deactivate it later if you want, like maybe on exit or something. And again, it will go down into the component, go to activate, and drag that up here, like that. Okay. Connect that. And we should be good to go. Compile and save. But you're going to notice something whenever I minimize this and I hit play. You see how it starts activated? The reason is because of something called auto activation. If you scroll down on your particle, auto activate, this is useful for looping particle effects. You wouldn't want to manually start all the particle effects in your level. You would actually want to trigger some, like an explosion, but you would want some to just be going by default. It assumes that you want it to be going by default when you drag in a new particle. So what I want to do is I want to turn that off. Activation, auto activate, disable that, and you'll see we don't see it, but we are manually activating it through our level blueprints right here. So this should turn it on, but we need to make sure it starts as off by default. I'm going to Control S, maybe we add a comment over here, enable fire. Okay, compile, save, go back. Now when we hit play, we shouldn't see it by default. But you'll see when we walked in there, we heard the sound effect, we saw the light come on, and we're now seeing a fire. This is good for really selling an event that happens in your level. We'll definitely pay attention to this whenever we come across it. And now you're noticing something else. You see how we hear the audio every single time we come in there. Maybe we don't want that. And I think this is a good opportunity to talk about a single instance of a trigger. If we open up level blueprint, I want this to only happen once. The easiest way to do that is something called a do once node. It does exactly what you think it'll do. Essentially, it's a gate that will lock us out after we've passed through that gate once. So what I mean by that is I'm going to drag all this over. And if we pull off of our branch node, and actually let's think about where we want to put this first. If I were to do a do once right after the on actor begin overlap, the first time anything crosses it, we do once and we can't ever re-trigger this thing. But what we really want to do is do this thing once if the player has activated it. So we still need to do our check, but if the player's done it, then we want to do once. We just want the traditional one. Drag this over even more. Pass through here. Once we hit this spot, we will only, this will lock out. And the next time we hit this point, we won't be able to continue, right? You can always reset it if you want. If you do some weird level reloading or something, you can always reset these do once nodes. But by default, they will only allow everything after it to happen one time, and then it will lock out. This should be good. If I hit compile, and I hit save and I minimize. And then we hit play. You'll see how we can only trigger that once now. It's now re-triggering. That's the power of the do once node. And we would want to use that when we're, for example, triggering a cutscene. We wouldn't want to trigger a cutscene every single time we enter this volume. Maybe spawning enemies might be another one where we want to do once. But some triggers you may want to happen every single time you enter it, like maybe a health refill volume or an ammo pickup node or something. That if you don't want it to stop working, then you may not want to do once node. So I think at this point it's worth thinking about your logic and whether or not you want this thing. But in my case, I do. So I'm just going to put that there. Okay, great. We've set up a little thing here. And I think with the knowledge of affecting other levels, triggering particle effects, and playing sounds, you can actually do a lot of cool stuff in your level. I would experiment and see what you can do with all of these things, and maybe try new things, right? Try to play an animation, try to trigger something that we haven't done yet.